Hey, what's up, guys? This is Guillermo Auto. I'm doing a 2015 Rav-4 wheel bearing in the front passenger side. These aren't too bad. They come as full assemblies. Here's about as many tools as I needed. I think I need like a couple more than this to do it. You could do it in the driveway if you're determined. There's no press involved, which is awesome. I'm a big fan of bearings that don't need a press. So basically, here's the new one. I'll put the part description or part number in the end of the video. But yeah, here it is. I'm gonna be doing it. I recommend you watch this video through before you start doing it, because there's some things that you may or may not do on yours. But here's how mine goes. First, I'm gonna take the caliper off. It's these 14mm bolts. Go ahead and get the top and bottom ones off. Top one. There's the bottom one. This off, put it aside. Alright, I'm going to wiggle this caliper off. I'm going to set it over here for now. You should string it up or secure it somehow so it don't fall on you. Go and get the pads out. So I'm grabbing my pads. Alright, sorry about that. I'm going to get my pads out. There's the inner one, here's the outer one. We'll go and set these aside. Now we gotta get the caliper bracket off. This is 17mm bolts right here. 2 of them. Go ahead and get these off. Loosen these caliper bolts off. Alright, so I'm gonna get this top one out. Grab this bottom one, get this one out. Again, these are 17mm. Slide this off and go put it aside for now. There's a rotor. Mine just slides right off. If yours is rusted on, there's these 2 threaded spots you can run a bolt through and it'll push it off the hub. Mine slides right off, so that's good. Alright, so we have to get this nut off. It's a 12-point nut, they call it. The size, I should say, this drive is what we use, because the part of the nut, it's pinched down so the threads, so it won't move on the threads, so we got to drive that back up before we can undo it. So get yourself a drive. This green one is from a Pittsburgh set from Harbor Freight. But basically what you're trying to do is just get that spot where it's bended down up like this. So I hammered on it, and now I got it up using that drive. Now I can take it off. You can lube these threads to make it easier on the threads. Don't want to damage these threads. So here's the socket. It's a size 30, 12-point socket, star socket, whatever you want to call it. Go ahead and put this on here and get this off. I'm going to use an air gun. If you're at home and you got like a big reservoir, you can probably use that. Go ahead and get this off with the air gun. Alright, so even with that punch and everything, it's still kind of roughed up the threads a little bit. So just be careful with these threads. Alright, so back here I can see these bolts. There's these 17mm bolts, and I feel like I can get them out. You know, they're right there, and I feel like I don't need to take the whole knuckle apart, so I'm gonna try to do that, see what happens. Like I said, there's 4 of them. They're 17mm, and that's pretty much what was holding the hub on. I'm gonna go ahead and just get these off. Got the top one out, and as you can see, it doesn't come all the way out. The axle's blocking it from coming out. So I originally thought like this wouldn't be a big deal, because I could just get them loose and push them back, and then I could just put the hub on and push them back in. So I got the bottom one off, same thing. They don't come all the way back because the axle's there. We'll go on the other side and see what happens. Get this back one loose. Oh, and this wire, let's go ahead and take this wire off too. We don't want to disturb this or break it. Alright, so I'm getting my bolt off, and we'll get that wire off in a second. Just we'll just be aware of it right now so we don't damage it. Alright, so I'm gonna get this last bottom one off. It is kind of tight in here. This gear wrench this wrench I'm using is a gear wrench. It has a thin head. If you're using like a cheaper wrench, maybe like a little too thick, you get this bottom bolt coming, and yeah, same thing with this one. It's just none of them will come out because the axle is in the way. So, but they are out of the hub. So what I was gonna try to do is hit on the hub with the rubber mallet and see if it'll come off. I did that, and it came off a little bit. You can see it's kind of gapped a little bit, and I was using my pry bar to gently pry on it, try to get it out. Yeah, just kind of going around, and I don't think it's gonna work because this axle will stick back out of it, and I think prying on it is not strong enough to get it out. So what I'm gonna do is take these two bolts off the knuckle and try to loosen this knuckle up. I don't need to take this tie rod apart. I think I could leave that there. I'm just gonna focus on these. Get these, they're 22 millimeters. And then I think I'm gonna do the lower ball joint too. I'm gonna get that loose. So these are 17 millimeters on the bottom of the ball joint. I just took them off. There's two nuts on the bottom and a bolt on the top. All right, and it came kind of loose just by taking the bolts or the bolt and the nuts off. I just use a pry bar to just pry it off of there. It's really easy actually. So with the bottom ball joint off, I was trying to just lube this up and see if I could get it out just by doing the ball joint. But I think I'm gonna have to end up getting these out because it's just not gonna work. Like I said, it's 22 millimeter, and I'm loosening these and taking these bolts out to get more movement for the axle to be able to come out, so we can get the hub off. All right, so these are 22 millimeters. I'm gonna go and take these off, and I use my air gun on these, but you could probably do them with a wrench or like a long breaker bar. Like I said, you could do it in your driveway if you got determination. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these out. Just gonna hit them on with a rubber mallet, get them out. So I hit them. Oh, let's get this wire freed up because when this axle or the steering knuckle moves, I don't want it to stretch this wire and break it. That'll be a whole new can of worms. I might do a video on what happens when you break it one of these days when I accidentally break one. But yeah, it's just a 10 millimeter. This is the wheel speed sensor. Go ahead and put this 10 millimeter bolt aside, and go ahead and pull this out. It's kind of in there a little tight. I just kind of wiggled it gently. You can use like a flathead to, just pop it out too. So I'm gonna set this out of the way so when the knuckle moves, it doesn't pull on this wire. I'm gonna take this 14 millimeter off too. That's a brake hose and also the wheel speed sensor wire bracket. We're gonna take that off to get even more movement. And the same with the brake hose. We don't really want to stress it out or stretch it by moving the knuckle. So we're just gonna try to disconnect all the things from it. And that's where the wire goes up all the way up there. So definitely don't want to break that. All right, here's the 14 millimeter. Another one for the brake hose. I'm gonna take that off so I could secure the caliper somewhere else. And if you don't secure it, just be really careful. These things never stay in place. Like, you do anything, they just pop out and fall. I don't want you to hit your face or hit your feet. I don't want nobody getting hurt. So we'll put that aside. All right, so these are halfway out. I'm just gonna go and take them out, and then the knuckle will fall forward. All right, see, it's falling forward now because I took the bolts out. Now I could hit on this better. So what I did here is I put the old nut on the axle and I hit on that with a real hammer. Generally never hit the axle with a hammer because it'll mushroom the end of it and you can't get a bolt or a nut back on. But this one was not coming off with a rubber mallet, so I did that. I gotta get a new nut now. See, this nut's damaged. But what I did is I put it on the very end and then let the nut take the hit, and it pushed the axle out. So now I could get these bolts out now that the axle's pushed back a little bit. Get these. They're all the same size, it looks like, so I'll just go ahead and set these aside. Yep, get these set aside. Alright, and then try to hit on this a little bit, see if it'll come off. Between that and prying on it, came off. And take note where the the heat shield is, or the splash shield is, like where it's at. You know, the fins kind of facing the back of the car. When you go to put it on, you can get it mixed up. And when I put the new one in, I'm just going to put some grease in here and clean off some of the rust with like a small wire brush. It's not required. I just do it to make the bearing go in better, seems like. Here's my new one, a new bearing. And I took the dust shield off the old one. And notice these holes, the marks, they actually line up with the marks on here. The holes with the greater gap are on the top. So let's go and put those in. And when you put it back on, just make sure it's lined up right. I also lube the splines a little bit, and I lube the inside of the hub a little bit. Again, not necessary. It's just for like when you put it on. So I put everything back on, and I hand threaded a couple of the bolts in. And now what I'm going to do is just, now that I got them in, I'm just going to try to tighten them all a little bit. Go kind of like in a circle pattern or like a star pattern. You know, just don't tighten one bolt all at once because it'll mess you all up. So I put my lower ball joint in. I'll go ahead and just put this back together, tighten it down. So that's tight, and then I'm going to put this up here together. Just so it's easier to tighten these bolts on the hub. It doesn't matter how these go back in. They do the same thing. They hold it tight. So, but a quick tip is if you put the bottom one in first, it makes it easier to do the top one. So I got those in. I tightened them down. Make sure those are super tight. And now I'm just going to tighten my 17mm hub bolts. Get those tight. And again, I'm not tightening like one all the way down. I'm going to go around and like a little bit on each. All around. I'll go like here, then I'll go to the other side and tighten it. Then I'll go up and tighten one until they all generally just come tightening up at the same time. That way the hub doesn't get cockeyed or anything. All right. So I got them all nice and tight. I got these bolts on. Now I'm gonna put a new 12-point nut on. You can lube these threads or put a little anti-seize on them. I'm gonna run this gun down until it's tight, and then I gotta push down that piece again into the gap. I'm using just a regular punch and a hammer. Put it right here and just knock it in. This will prevent it from moving. Alright, so I got it all knocked down. You can see it's just kind of dented so it won't ever move on the axle. Put my rotor back on. I got my caliper bracket back on. My pads back in. And put my caliper back on with the two 14mm bolts. And then put my 14mm back together on this bracket. And then I put this one bracket back together. You could reference the other side if you don't remember what they look like or how they go. And then with this, I'm going to put my wheel speed sensor back in. This is the 10mm bolt that holds it in. So I'm going to put this in. Alright, so I got that tight. Put this wire back in this little clip piece. Alright, that's good. Alright, and that's it. So double check all your bolts. You know, this isn't stuff you want to mess around with. Make sure everything's tight. And you know, if you got everything good and tight, then you'll be fine. And you know, I hope this video helps you guys out.